Hey, it's Manu with 22 Sound, the independent record store in Mandeville, Louisiana. And while we're really proud to be a record store that involves all kinds of different genres and eras, I have to also admit I am a helpless metal nerd. And just like most metal nerds, I love me some lists. And been working, of course, on my lists pretty much all year round, adding records to them, removing others. And so I figured, why not share those metal records that I enjoyed the most? Of course, this is a very subjective list, but I personally always love to see or read or watch other people's lists, and usually I find some stuff that I missed throughout the year, so maybe the same thing happens to you. So let's get right in, starting with Dødsritt, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but it's usually a good sign when it comes to black metal. Their record, Nocturnal Will, was one of my favorite melodic black metal releases of the year. That's generally a genre that I really like. I love when bands combine beauty with heaviness, just in general. And this, even though there's a lot of bands that do that, it's not really a brand new thing. They really found something that kind of stands apart. And I think a big part of it is the beautiful guitar tone on the leads, but not just the tone, of course, it's what they play, what they do with it. Really, really nice melodies, really tasteful leads and solos, and all that is played with such an energy, such enthusiasm. It's a little bit, especially when you first start the record, a bit like Iron Maiden goes black metal. And yeah, in a way, that's kind of a good way to describe it. Really long, sprawling songs and a really great atmosphere that they come up with. I would say actually, think they're not at their peak yet. This is a great record, but I think they might even have something even better in them. I'm really looking forward to the next one already. Great stuff. Another one that's kind of a surprising thing for me personally is Cyberus, Maze Envy. Surprising in how much I enjoyed this record. I'm usually not a big Doom guy. Every now and then a Doom record comes around that really excites me, and this was one of them. I usually like my stuff a little faster. It doesn't have to be blazing fast, but you know, more than 3 snare beats a minute is good for me usually. But what's cool about this is, especially, I think what kind of makes it stand apart, is a certain eeriness to the whole record, mostly done by the keys. I love that they employ those keys without ever falling into this symphonic metal trap. It's a very different approach. It really makes it kind of eerie, kind of spooky sounding, which is great in combination with that kind of doomy heaviness. Every now and then they pick up tempo a little bit, which is great too, to kind of keep it interesting, kind of, you know, keeps it from being too the same all the time. So this is really a great record, one that I kept coming back to pretty much all year round. Next one on the list is 200 Stab Wounds, Manuel Manic Procedures. Have to admit, I really didn't love their first record that much. Remember when it came out, checked it out, I thought it was pretty solid, like, you know, great old school death metal, nothing wrong with it, but it didn't really grab me. So I was really surprised when I checked this second one out that it was one of those records that really just immediately, grabbed me, that I really loved from the beginning. And I think it might be a little bit of personal preference. They kind of went a little bit more into the thrashy side of things. Even though I listen to way more death metal these days than thrash, I actually like those kind of thrashy, you know, just razor sharp, dry kind of riffs, and they have tons of them on here. Somebody said this is closer to Slayer than Cannibal Corpse in comparison to the last record. Would love to take credit for that, because I think that actually sums it up pretty well. Sometimes I love a record that's just basically a celebration of the riff, just riff after riff that hits you. This might be personally the one record this year that I love the most on that front when it comes to just riffs. Great stuff. Next one is Black Curse, Burning in Celestial Poison. This is a intense fucking record. Can't really describe it so much. I mean, I guess it's blackened death metal, but it's so blackened, it's really pretty much burnt in hell type blackened, if that makes any sense. Very close to black metal, somewhere in between those two genres, but it's chaotic, it's almost claustrophobic, it's really, really intense, but somehow I kept coming back to this record and love it every time. It's really raw, but still it hits you right in the face. Great how they figured out a production to kind of do that exactly the right way. It's dirty, but it's still punchy. This is a record where you just gotta listen to. It's hard to describe, but one of my favorites of the year. For everybody who loves especially the blacker end of death metal, or just black metal in general, I think this is closer to black than death. Do yourself a favor, put it on headphones, really get into it. It's great stuff. Then another one I have here that's probably the least metal of all the records on this list, Chapel of Disease, Echoes of Light. When I first heard those guys a few years ago, I was kind of like, well, this kind of answers the question of what would happen if Mark Knopfler all of a sudden joined a death metal band. I know it's not a perfect description, but it kind of goes into that. This is a melodic death metal band where the guitar really is extra melodic. Actually, oftentimes the leads are barely distorted, really more reminiscent of that kind of 70s hard rock way of guitar playing, which is really cool. Maybe a little bit of Blue Oyster Cult kind of in there sometimes in the type of ideas that they have. On this record, they went even more in that direction. Actually, it is a stretch to call this death metal at this point. The vocals are still mainly harsh, not even the whole way through. So that kind of still puts it in the extreme metal section. But other than that, it is actually almost closer to be a hard rock record. But without the song structures being the typical, 3-4 minutes compact thing. The songs are still pretty long. But I really thought, even though it is a bit of a throwback, the way the guitar playing is, especially, it's still something very original. Can't really think of many bands that really sound like that. And especially just really, really tasteful, really beautiful guitars. The tone is just so nice. This is, I would say, a record mainly for people who really appreciate guitars. Not that it's all like shredding type stuff, but just it's very guitar oriented, so right up my alley. Really good stuff. And it's a nice little break from the rest of this list. Is pretty intense. This is a little lighter and it's good stuff. Ripped to Shreds is my next one, Sanji. This is, intense is a good way to describe it. Really punch pedal put to the metal pretty much the whole way through, but it's just kind of like Guitar Hero death metal with some thrashy and sometimes a little black influences, but really just very, very tightly played, very clean production without not taking away anything from the heaviness, but just very nicely played. This is not like this raw kind of dirty stuff. This is really people that can play, and the guitar especially, man, shredding. And if you like that kind of stuff, you're in for a treat. But actually, it's not just blind shredding. It's really a lot of, first of all, great fucking riffs, but also really, really cool leads, melodic leads in there. So there's a little bit of that, 90s melodic death metal influence in there, but with a modern touch. Really love this stuff. They're just getting better and better, I find. Next one is On to Others. This is probably the record that has maybe the most mass appeal, at least in theory, of this list. On to Others really been that kind of, gothic metal that they've been doing. On this one, they really kind of branch out into a lot of different directions. It's like they're shooting for the arenas. I don't know if that's still possible with this kind of music even, but they're still trying, which I just respect. There's some stuff on it that's kind of punky. Some really kind of feels a little bit like 80s goth. There's a bit of new wave in there. There's one song that's basically straight up 80s hair metal power ballad, which is right up my alley. I love that kind of stuff. This could sound a bit disjointed, but it kind of is being held together by, for one, pretty much every song is really catchy chorus in there. And secondly, the vocals, while not having a super wide range, that actually kind of works in their favor, because there's a very distinct way of him singing, and that kind of keeps those songs together so they can musically kind of branch out and it still feels cohesive, like one record of one band. And I know not everybody loved this, but I thought they actually did a really good job. I think it's great that they're shooting for the stars, and they're great songwriters. So really worked for me. Next one is Gatecreeper, Dark Superstition. That was a record that really kind of had a little bit of a crossover within the different subgenres in metal I found, as far as like popularity goes, because if you're still listening at this point, you know how many subgenres metal has and how crazy it sometimes is, and so it's very hard for bands to really branch out and kind of get the whole metal crowd together. Not that this is what they're doing with the whole metal crowd, but I still find that this is kind of one that got fans of death metal, traditional death metal, more melodic death metal in, but also maybe people that are not into the super extreme stuff all the time, because there's a really, even though it is definitely still death metal, vocals are harsh and everything, there is really a certain catchiness to those compositions, and I think that's really cool. They're, to me, immediately reminded me of In Flames, 90s In Flames, that kind of stuff, Swedish melodic death metal when I first put it on, but I find that a compliment. I love that kind of stuff, and there lately haven't been too many records in that mode that really excited me. I think they really it's kind of a breath of fresh air for this type of stuff, where they really, the energy that they have, that they play those songs with, the catchiness, the hooks, really good stuff. I really think they deserve the recognition that they've been getting in the metal community lately. Next up is one kind of late find for me that I kind of stumbled upon that late, but absolutely loved it, so I included it in my list. It's Satan. Record is called Visual Kill, The Blossoming of Psychotic Depravity. What a crazy title. This is absolutely amazing. I love the energy of this, the enthusiasm. First glance, black metal, they look like just that kind of raw second wave black metal in their whole iconography, but there is so much more to it. For one, there's a good bit of a punk vibe to it sometimes, really like that kind of dirtiness to it that's really great, but sometimes also a bit of like even like 80s metal, the type of leads they're playing, type of soloing that they're doing. There's really a lot of moments that really stand out from a melodic level that they throw in there that kind of are surprising. There's this little part where all of a sudden, like in this chorus, clean guitar in there, and it just really stands out in that kind of intensity of black metal. There's even major scales on here, crazy. I know they're not the first ones to do it, but they do it really well. I love that kind of youthful enthusiasm that they're playing this music with, and that they're, especially in black metal, a lot of bands, of course, branch out and kind of throw in different stuff, but that kind of excitement that that they just kind of don't give a shit what people think, I'm guessing, the way this sounds. I love that. This has really been surprise fine. Never heard of this band before, to be honest, but that excited me from the very beginning. Then next up is a band or a record that probably got the most nods in the metal community this year. Blood, Incantation, Absolute Everywhere. I would say this is probably if you somehow figured out an aggregated list of all the best metal album lists out there and on different platforms, this will probably be number one. And I think rightfully so. This is really a special record. I know it's not very surprising to put this on the list, but hey, I'm just putting those that really excited me, and this was one of them. I think they really found themselves here. They have shown in their discography that they can do very different things, kind of synth wavy type stuff. They can do just old school brutal death metal. They can do kind of like the technical death metal stuff. They have those proggy influences, and here it's really cool how they kind of put it all together, especially of course those 70s prog influences are very apparent. I think I heard Pink Floyd name dropped in a million reviews and articles about this record, and it is of course it makes absolute sense, but they do it so well. I love how they blend that heaviness with the prettiness, with the weirdness, and they kind of make it really seem like one cohesive thing that makes sense. And it's just such a trip to listen to this record. It's so entertaining because you never know what's coming next. And the cool thing is, I loved it in the beginning when I didn't know what was coming next. But even now, after I listened to it, I don't know how many times, and I know what's being expected, it actually enjoy it even more the more I listen to it. Really great band. I think they deserve all the praise they're getting. And yeah, this list has been pretty much not in any specific order. This is not like from 10 to 1. I'm not even sure exactly how many records it is. I would have to go back and count it real quick. No, they're too different for me to really compare them to each other. I think that I love them for very different reasons. But there's one record that I think that kind of stood out. If I had to pick one that I really just enjoyed the most, probably put on the most, it is one. Before I get to that, just real quick, a few honorable mentions, really great records too that I didn't quite put in the list. Fulci, Dark Face Killings, really cool stuff. Into Armor, New Heaven. This is kind of like all the different ways of doing extreme metal and extreme noise put together in one. It's such a variety of styles put in that record, but really cool how they did that. Also loves V Moore's The Timeless Ever Present. That's a little more traditional black metal, but cool stuff too. But if I had to pick one, my number one metal record of 2024 is Spectral Wounds, Songs of Blood and Mire. And I think it's just because this kind of combines pretty much everything I love about black metal with some more stuff that is not so typical or not typically found in black metal. I mean, for one, it's like you have the fury, the rage, the aggression, of course, but you also have so much melody. You have actually hooks, catchiness. You have like that kind of epicness in certain moments, but then you also have the just raw in-your-faceness of it. And one word to describe this, or at least portions of it, I think is something that you can rarely ever use in black metal, and that's swagger. Somehow they have that kind of rock and roll swagger and put it into black metal. It's absolutely brilliant. To me, absolutely amazing record. I love how they incorporate melodies in here without just doing that kind of, big maiden melodies, like just big leads. They find very different ways to kind of incorporate melody and keep it interesting, keep it flowing. all the traditional trademarks of black metal are here. There are those, tremolo riffs, blast beats, shrieks, but even the shrieking, they actually find a way to never have clean vocals, but still have a certain catchiness to certain parts, a certain hookiness. I can imagine really getting great in a live setting. They have that kind of energy to them, where like for instance the guitars are talking about the melody. It comes of course mainly from the guitars, but there's certain moments where it's almost like a punk rock kind of dirtiness to their riffing, and in other moments they're like epic without ever getting into that cheesy territory. And I love how those parts just kind of seamlessly go from one to the other. It's very hard to explain, very hard to pull off, especially since they're putting this into relatively manageable song lengths. They're not super long 15-minute epics. They are relatively brief for metal of that style, which I think makes it even better. Every song really works on its own, but it still creates like this cohesive whole, and somehow the record even gets better and better and better, I find, towards the end. Like it gets more intense, more glorious in a way. Love the energy to it, and I love the drumming too. I have to give a special shout out to the drumming. It's not extremely technical or anything, but what I love about it is it's so varied. A lot of black metal records, drumming is relatively monotonous. Not always, I love a lot of it, but sometimes that happens. But here it's really cool how sometimes it really puts in beats that are not really typical to black metal, and it works, and it gives them that kind of rock and roll swagger. Like it's almost like sometimes there's like an arena rock band wanting to get out of these crazy guys and pushes through. Really cool. A lot of it comes from the drumming there. I could go on and on about this record. Really, absolutely love it. I love their earlier stuff, and I thought after their last record, they really have that in. I said it earlier with Dotesrid, kind of feel like they have that record that's really going to be their peak, where everything gets together. I find they have like still a little bit going. With Spectral Wound, I kind of had the same feeling before this one. And when it came out, I kind of braced myself for some disappointment, but no, they didn't just meet the expectations, or my personal expectations. They actually shattered them and really put out that record that I was hoping for. Really great stuff. Anyway, enough of that. This is my little list of my favorite metal records of the year. There's been many more, and I can't wait for next year to discover more, but I also can't wait to see what other people have to say. Maybe put in the comments what records you really loved this year. At this time of the year, I love to kind of discover that stuff that I missed throughout the year, and that I brace myself for hopefully another year of great metal. I think the scene is very alive. There's really a lot going on, and yeah, I hope you love it as much as I do. And by the way, if you want to support us, our record store, come by in person, of course, if you're in the New Orleans area. We're in Mandeville, Louisiana, really close to New Orleans. Otherwise, of course, check out our website, 22soundrecords.com. You can order straight from us and support a little independent record store run by people who love music. And otherwise, follow us too on our socials at 22soundrecords, and on YouTube, of course, too. Thank you so much.